again. You can see I am your roving reporter out here all across America this week. But, just because I'm on the road doesn't mean you guys can hide from me because I am going to find you and I'm going to ask you, come on, let's go fight dysfunction. So wave your flag, fighting dysfunction. How do we say it? One dynamic at a time. And that's what we do on this program. Now, usually, as you know, we take calls. I won't be taking calls today due to some time constraints. But yesterday we had several calls that I wasn't able to get to because of time. And so I am going to still be answering calls. They just won't be live. I'll just be giving you as the questions were called in yesterday. So we're going to hop into it. We do have a thought for the day. It kind of goes with a bunch of the questions that we have been getting and also with important things in life. And I'll get to that in a second. But first, just want to remind you, we have a webinar coming up. 2-hour webinar, 2-hour plus. I never stop at 2 hours on these things because there's too much to talk about. And here's the question. What's standing in between you and happiness, or between you and a ceasing of pain in a situation or a relationship? What's that obstacle? What's going on with that person? What is that other person? Really, we're talking about other people. What is that other person doing that is making it hard for you or them or anybody? And whatever it is they're doing for it to get better, it's standing in the way. So for whatever they are doing, it's got to get better. For the situation to get better, they got to have a talking to. As my mama used to say, boy, I'm going to have to give you a talking to. Well, that was her extremely sophisticated psychological way of saying that she and I had to have a difficult conversation about something. Now, there's a lot of different words for that. Difficult conversations, tough conversations, confrontations, all of that. But it means entering into that space and facing some kind of obstacle that's in the way with us and another person. Doesn't have to be mean, doesn't have to be mad, doesn't have to be adversarial. What it means is to confront something actually means to face it. And a lot of times when we have an issue with a person that we really need to address because we need to resolve it, because we need for them to be different in some way, or we need to stop the pain if they're not going to be different, we have to confront it. Well, confront means to face something, frontally confront. So we're doing a 2-hour webinar on the science of this, the psychology of this, the relational dynamics of it, as well as the faith dimensions of confrontation. And there is a science to it and there's an art to it. We've entitled this The Art of Confrontation. That's the title. And the subtitle is Delivering the Truth with Love and Grace. And so, there's an art to this because, you can't just send somebody a memo and say, hey, buddy, stop it. Or I need for you to do this differently, or, whatever it is. There's a chemistry to it. There's a way to approach it. There are different circumstances and different kinds of people that require different kinds of methods for it to work well. There are things that get in the way, all of that. And we're going to be going into all the science and all of the art of that on this webinar. And it will come about on September 28th. Now's the time to get signed up because we still have early bird registration. And you get signed up by going to boundaries.me/confrontation. I'm sorry. boundaries.me/confront. There, had to confront myself there. All righty, and we will hop into it. So, thought of the day as we were kind of into the whole kind of feeling about, confrontation, resolving things, looking at things, all of that stuff. You know what, generally speaking, if there is something that we need to confront, part of the reason that we need to confront it, part of it, is because some way we have become aware that this isn't good. Okay, we've become aware that something's not good. Well, let me tell you one of your main mechanisms for becoming aware that something is not good or something's not going well or something hurts or something is toxic. And that is that your system is going to have an experience. It's very important. And that experience is something called anger. Now, we also have the flip side of anger. Sometimes we have pain or loss or woundedness. But even in a grief reaction, like a pain or a loss, generally there's an anger component of that as well, because we're protesting it. Stop this. I don't want this. Stop it. No, that's not good. That's our system crying out, saying this is not good. So a thought for the day today, talk a little bit about anger and the role of anger and where it comes from and why it's good and why it's bad and how to handle it and all of that. Becoming comfortable with anger. Now, what does that mean? How can you become comfortable with anger? Well, it's not that anger feels good, although there is a certain way in which it does feel good because it gives congruence of an expression. It feels good to finally say this, right? Because you're aligning with something inside of you that matters, like I'm being hurt, or this is wrong, or what you're doing to that person is wrong, or what you're doing to yourself is wrong. And I'm protesting that. Okay, when you get violated in some way, when you get trespassed against in some way, when something happens, God has wired our system where there is a pushing against and an alert, red flashing light, something's wrong. We don't get angry about something that's right or something that's good or something that's pleasurable or something that's satisfying or something that's fulfilling. Anger is basically a protest emotion. And it signals us when you feel anger, your system is protesting something. Now, here's what I want you to figure out from the get-go here. That when we say getting comfortable with anger, what I mean by that is not necessarily that you like it. Somebody really likes to feel anger, then we got a different kind of problem, really. But if I'm flying an airplane or I'm driving a car and I got an instrument panel and there's a red flashing light that goes on that says my oil is low or my pressure is up or whatever it is, that light is a signal and it alerts me to a certain state of wellness with the vehicle or with the airplane. Now, if everything's fine, it's fine. But when that flashing light starts, then I know something is not right. It's not a bad way to look at anger. Anger is a signal that something is not right. Now, first step, becoming comfortable. What if I have a phobia of red blinking lights? I can't drive a car very well. What if I have a phobia of red flashing lights on an airplane dashboard, instrument panel? I can't fly an airplane. Or if I'm really afraid of it, I might not look at it. And what if I don't look at it? What happens? We might go down. We might catch on fire. I mean, a lot of other stuff that can happen. So if I'm not comfortable with looking at it, I was flying an airplane not too long ago, and warning things started going off and flashing lights and all of that. And the pilot just starts to look around and look in the air. Let's see what that is. I think starts talking to the co-pilot, and I was, watching all this. I think what we got is, and they're conversing and they're looking at procedures and all of that, and they got it figured out. They were very comfortable with not with having a problem, right? Not with that the plane could blow up, but they're comfortable with the messenger that they could embrace. You assume we got a problem. Remember that from the movie? We got a flashing light. There's an issue. So they're not afraid of the signal. Some people, when they start to feel anger, They get afraid of the anger, of just feeling it. Now, if I can't feel it, I can't acknowledge it, and I can't own it, then I could crash the plane or I could wreck the car. Or said another way, my immune system could be functioning or could be beginning to fail. I could develop stress reactions. I could avoid relationship. I could not resolve a conflict in a relationship. I could get hurt worse. I could never get to the end goal of what I'm trying to do. See, if we can't acknowledge the problem, if we have a phobia of the anger itself, then we're not going to have the signal. We're not going to have the signal. We're not going to resolve the problem. So the first thing I want you to do is say, anger is okay. Anger is okay. It's a signal. That's what it is. It's a signal. Now, next thing is we don't just take our anger and start pulling levers, which is what some people do. It's like they're flying an airplane, the red light goes off. They just, grab something and start dive bombing or something. No, but some people do. There's no gap between the feeling of the anger and the response. They have impulsive anger reactions. There's no gap between feeling and thought and impulse or action. Immediate anger, immediate strike out. As one of my favorite verses says, the fool is easily annoyed, quickly annoyed, airs it, right? And some people are like that. As soon as they get frustrated about something, boom, they're in somebody's face. Really bad way to live. Really bad way to live. Some people say, well, I'm just being myself. Well, aim higher, because that's not good. Okay. It's a signal. So the next thing is to ask, what is this signal? What's wrong? Now, here is what separates the mature people from the immature people. Immature people will almost instantly assume that whatever's wrong is outside of myself, and it is good for me to feel wronged about this. Not so. I can be angry. Something's wrong, okay. But sometimes when I'm angry, what's wrong is inside of me. It can be defensive anger. Maybe somebody's trying to get close to me. You ever seen somebody angrily push somebody away? Why? Because an angry responsiveness to defensive fear against being vulnerable, that's not really good anger. It's not anger about something wrong outside. It's that I've got some fears or inabilities or resistance to or whatever opening up to somebody, provided they're safe. What about this one? You ever seen a control freak get angry? Why do they get angry? Something's wrong. Absolutely something's wrong. It's not what they think. They think something's wrong because this other person, you won't do it, I tell you, or you're saying no to me. Or well, what's wrong is my wish to control. Well, there's something wrong when we're angry. But it might be in me. If I just can't handle somebody saying no to me and I get mad at them, then I've got a wish to control another person and violate their freedom. So the problem is in me. What if somebody makes a mistake and they don't get it right or don't meet my expectations? Well, if I'm angry for that, then I'm perfectionistic, and the problem is within me, right? They're just living life, not meeting my expectations or whatever. So there's other examples like that. But the point is, just because they're angry, usually if they're angry, something's wrong. But what's wrong? Well, it might be inside of me. On the other hand, it may be outside of me, and that I am innocently being trespassed against, controlled, dominated, gaslighted, judged, perfectionized. No shortage of what people can do to us. And if somebody violates you in some way, you're going to feel anger, I hope. And that anger is a signal. Number one, we're comfortable with the signal. Number two, the signal tells us something is wrong. Number three, I've examined what's wrong and said what's wrong is not in me, it's on the outside. So what do? Number 4, strike out, get mad, yell. No, 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 no. Number 4, choose among options. This is called emotional regulation, impulse control, judgment, wisdom, values. All of that goes into the mix. And I might be angry and you might be wrong. And I have a host of options from which to choose. I could, as one of my favorite verses says, Proverbs something something says, it is a glory to a person to overlook an offense. Sometimes somebody does something rude or whatever, and I'm after something bigger here than getting in a squabble about this. I'm just going to let that go, or I'm going to let that insult go because I want to resolve the conflict or whatever it is. Sometimes we let things go for some bigger reason. Okay. A. B. Sometimes the right response is to realize, no, what you're doing is significant. It's not something I can let go. It is something that hurts our relationship or hurts you or hurts me or hurts me or hurts me. In other words, I need to address this. And so I sit down and I confront you about it. But how do I confront? Do I confront with the anger as a tool, or do I remember the anger as a signal? And the tool are my communication skills of being able to say that in a way that hopefully brings about the best chance of us resolving it. There's a lot of different options. We can overlook it. We can wait, address it at another date. We can address it right then. We can address it kindly with empathy, or we can address it tough, directly, and with a display of anger. I mean, sometimes you've got to get, and I mean that in the emotional sense, we've got to, I've been in situations before where finally I said, just, you've got to get strong with somebody and you've got to let them know you're serious, because whatever reason, they're being whatever reason that they are. And sometimes, I'm not talking about a vulnerable person, but sometimes there are situations where we have to get really firm with somebody. I've been in situations in sometimes boardrooms of very powerful people and it gets tough. And if you're not strong enough to contain them, then the narcissist is going to rule the day. Somebody's going to say, sit down and be quiet. Like that. Not like, would you please? So my point is, remember when Jesus went in, he turned over the tables in the temple? So it's not a one-to-one response with our anger. It's what is needed to serve what is good. If somebody's getting beat up on the street and you walk up on them, you're going to yell, leave them alone, get out of here. You're going to use force, right? But why would you use force at a child who makes a mistake? Or a spouse who makes a mistake? Or doesn't meet an expectation? Or a worker that, screws it up somehow? Is that really a need for force? I don't think so. So that's why we have a progression. Becoming comfortable with anger also means to become comfortable with the different choices that wisdom would dictate of how I address the problem. Excuse me. I yelled. Now I got a scratchy throat. See what yelling does to you? One of my favorite verses says, the anger of man or mankind does not achieve the righteousness of God. Paraphrased, our anger is not a tool to try to get somebody to change or behave or whatever. Our anger is a signal that something's wrong, but it's usually not the way we're going to achieve getting to a good result is by yelling at somebody. Or, that's why there's so many verses in Proverbs and everywhere else about the problems with people expressing anger in hurtful ways. One of my favorite verses is in Ephesians 6, and it puts it together. It says this: be angry. Actually, it's a command. It comes from the Psalms, where it says tremble. Like there's some things it just really bugs me. And it says, be angry, embrace your anger, feel your anger. There's energy in that. And then the same verse, it says, be angry, and in your anger, while you're in it, don't sin. So feel your feelings, use them, but don't hurt anybody. Solve the problem. So there we go. A few thoughts about anger and what it does. I said also we would answer a few questions. We're not taking calls today, but answer a few questions that are coming in. And here's one of them about what we were just talking about. It says, does something is wrong? When I said something is wrong, it means something is bad and we need to get rid of it. For example, when we get angry at another person's actions. Well, I think you might have written that before. I talked about there's something that's wrong. Could be inside a bus, or it could be out there, or it could be in the world. And anger generally is a sign that we need to get rid of it, right? So if somebody is doing something hurtful and we feel angry about it, we step up to confront it, to face it, to set a limit on it. Yes, so we can get rid of it. Now, how we get rid of it has a lot to do with, do they want to come to the party or not? When we say, hey, you stepped on my toe, please don't step on my toe. And they go, oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I won't do that again. Then what do? We got rid of it. Matthew 18 says, go talk to somebody. And if they listen, you've won them over. Well, it also says, if they don't listen, then you might have to take further action to get rid of it. You might have to get a friend to go confront them as well. That's what it says in the next verse. And if they don't listen to a friend, you might have to do an intervention. Ultimately, to get rid of it, you might not get rid of the problem in terms of in them, but you get rid of the problem because you might have to separate from them. You say, I can't be around you as long as you're going to step on my toe. So yes, we move to get rid of it. If it's in ourselves, we own it, and we good old fashioned. Here's a word from the old preacher. You got to repent. You know what repent means? Change my mind and do something different, basically. So sometimes we get rid of it by seeing it in ourselves. When does somebody's anger and outburst become abusive? Well, when it hurts somebody. Basically, it kind of reminds me of the Supreme Court. Which Supreme Court justice was it that wrote? Is back when something came to the Supreme Court about pornography. I can't remember the case or whatever. And one of the justices, I think it was the Supreme Court, some judge somewhere, said when he wrote the brief, I don't exactly know how to define pornography, but I know it when I see it. Well, there's something in each of us that we kind of know what abuse looks like. It needs to use somebody in a bad way, right? To hurt them in a bad way, to injure them in a bad way. So when does it become abusive? Well, I think there's kind of an absolute definition of that. It's abusive to hit somebody. It's, all of the 5-year-old would know those things. But then I think there is a subjective component to this. And some of it has to do with the relationship. Well, what I mean by subjective is some people feel like something's abusive when some people feel like, well, that was rude. Or some people feel like, yeah, that's what we talk in our family. And I don't mean I'm not letting abusers off the hook here, because I said some things are definitely abusive. But I'm also saying that if some things are abusive, that the abuser might not feel like they're abusive, but the abused person really feels like they are, and they're being injured. So love and sensitivity and care and empathy would cause us to bend the knee to the one that feels abused. Also, there are sometimes, and I've been in situations um, where I've been in meetings, for example, especially in business situations a lot of times, and somebody says, you know, my manager, or this person is, that's so abusive or whatever. And I was there and I heard it, and it wasn't even close to anything I would think is abusive. And I just disagreed with them in a way and said, I don't think that's a good idea. And they said, well, that's toxic. That's emotionally abusive to say, it's really not. So there are real violations that really do injure somebody. And there are real things that actually do hurt somebody that we bend the knee to as well. And then sometimes I think people can be falsely accused. That just happens in life. Um, I remember one time in a hospital situation where um, I was directing the floor of a psych unit, and there was a particular um, activity group that was doing their activity, but then also the 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 patient's physician and psychologist needed to see them. There were some test results that had come back and all this, and we really needed to talk to the patient. We pulled them out of this person's activity because this was more important in the big scheme of things. And the person who was leading that activity felt that that was abusive. I remember that and getting called abusive. And I remember thinking, I just really don't know how that was abusive. You can empathize and care. But the point is, um, most times we know, and some of the times, even in the areas where some people would say, yeah, yeah, no, no, whatever. The rule is if it feels hurtful to somebody, then why are we doing it? You might not think it's abusive, but they feel hurt by it. So bend the knee in love and treat them like you would want to be treated. If somebody's doing something to you that you don't like, you want them to stop. So that's kind of one of the ways that I would think about that. How do you determine if your anger is due to unrealistic expectations? Oh, brother, that is a good one. I have a saying that there are some things that God and the Beverly Hillbillies would agree on. That's not okay. To expect somebody to act differently than that, God and the Beverly Hillbillies would both agree. Okay, there's some things, and it's pretty clear. And one of the things that I would say, no, we could do a whole show on expectations, but I'm gonna say something quickly before we got to go. I'm just going to have to say that probably, I don't know what the number is, but 90% plus of what we should expect from people is not rocket science. It's pretty much agreed upon. I mean, if you go to the scriptures, you go to any kind of moral code that exists, what should we have expect? We should expect people, we should be able to expect each other to, show up, wash your hands, don't throw sand in each other's eyes. Sort of like, the rules of the playground. It's like, don't lie, cheat, steal, judge, be unfaithful, be unloyal, attack somebody, all of those expectations that the scriptures are pretty clear about. And the Bible really doesn't have a bunch of hidden stuff in it. The stuff that God expects of us, he kind of says the same thing over and 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 over in different words, in different ways. In fact, one day in the book of Micah, this is my life verse, Micah 6:8. It says, it has been shown you or told you, mankind, what is good and what is it that the Lord expects of you? To love mercy, to do justice, and to walk humbly with God. There it is. Now you can do drop down windows on all those. To love mercy, what does that look like? Well, to be tenderhearted, compassionate, and empathic, and you know, help somebody when they need help, and walk the second mile if they ask you for one, and bind up the brokenhearted. There's a million different ways in which it's talking about how mercy is lived out, but it's pretty. These expectations are pretty. Not that complicated. And then to do justice, to be fair and have the same rules for everybody, and to execute, justice on both the powerful and the whom we would determine not so powerful. Leviticus 19 says, "Don't pervert justice. The don't defer to the great and powerful, nor be partial to the needy." For example, if somebody's stealing, they're stealing, and so it's not good to pervert justice for anybody. We got to be on it. Go to Psalm 101. You'll see a good. Oh my gosh, what a great passage! A good list of expectations. David said, "I'm going to expect certain things for certain people. If they don't live up to it, I'm just not going to hang around them. Liars, cheaters, unfaithful people, perverse, judgmental, narcissists." He just lists it all, but it's stuff we kind of know, right? Now, here's the other problem. We go past that. Now we're into preferences. Some people moralize their preferences. Classic example, you put two people in a relationship, make them roommates or make them married. One of them is going to be more structured than the other one. Okay. One of them is going to think everything's got its place, everything's got its time, everything. If you do a dish, then you clean it and you put it away. That's more structured. The other person would think, if you do a dish, you put it in the sink, I'll come to it at some point. Who's right? Neither one of them. It's a preference. Okay. But what happens is a lot of times we moralize our preferences and we think other people, you should do it this way. No, I can't believe you. What were you thinking? And we're taking a preference. It's not a moral violation. It's a preference. And now we're going to enforce it as if it were. That's where you get in trouble. Share your preferences, listen to each other. Don't expect them unless they're mutually agreed upon. One of the most powerful phrases that I like to talk about in a lot of settings is mutually agreed upon expectations. So let's do it that way. Okay, as I told you, we are having a short version of the program today because I'm working and traveling out on the road. But somebody sent us a really good verse here. So we're talking about anger. Proverbs 22, 24 through 25 seems to say that that it can be instilled in us and other things. It says, how about this? Do not make friends with a hot-tempered person. Do not associate with one easily angered. That's what I'm talking about, the easily provoked. Or you may learn their ways and get yourself ensnared. As we said, maturity is contagious, right? So is immaturity. Anyway, that's it for today, folks. Thank you for joining me. I'm sorry we had a short show today. It's always good to at least hear from you, and we can I'll be able to read some comments. But join us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and on the podcast. As well as, don't forget, talking about confrontation and anger, the art of confrontation coming up September 28th. You can sign up for it by going to boundaries.me/confront. And what that will help you to do, I'll be there for 2+ hours talking about the art of confrontation, the science that's involved in it, the relationship dynamics, the personality issues, the character formation, the character diagnosis, the tools, the tips, all of it. There are ways of confronting that don't work. There are ways of confronting that have a greater chance of working. You can't always guarantee a perfect outcome, but you can guarantee one thing, that there are ways that give you the greatest chance to get to a perfect outcome if it's possible for it to happen. And that's all we can ever do in life. We can do the things that have the greatest ability to come out well. That's what the art of confrontation is. September 28th, go to boundaries.me/confront to get signed up. Okay, you guys are awesome. I will see you tomorrow.